So, have you ever looked at an old map and thought, wait a second, I don't recognize that country? It's a strange feeling, right? Like looking at a ghost on a piece of paper. The world map we know today is actually pretty new. Borders shift, nations are born, and sometimes countries just disappear. Today, we're retaking a deep dive into history to uncover the stories of 5 influential countries that no longer exist. From powerful empires to modern states, their stories are a fascinating reminder that nothing is permanent. So, grab your explorer's hat, because we're about to travel back in time. Let us start our journey in the Balkans, with a country many of you have probably heard of, Yugoslavia. Born from the ashes of World War I in 1918, its name literally means Land of the South Slavs. It was created with a noble idea to unite diverse ethnic and religious groups like Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, Bosniaks, and others under one flag. For decades, under the strong leadership of Josip Broz Tito, Yugoslavia managed to walk a unique path, balancing between the capitalist West and the communist East during the Cold War. It was known for its stunning Adriatic coastline, vibrant culture, and a sense of shared identity. But after Tito's death in 1980, the ties that held this diverse nation together began to fray. Old ethnic tensions, suppressed for years, resurfaced with a vengeance. Economic problems made things worse, and fiery nationalism began to spread like wildfire, too. What followed in the 1990s was a series of tragic and brutal wars. The once united country shattered into pieces in one of modern history's most painful collapses. From the single entity of Yugoslavia, 7 new countries emerged: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and the partially recognized state of Kosovo. The story of Yugoslavia is a powerful and sobering lesson in how quickly unity can turn into division. Next, we travel to the heart of Cold War Europe, to a country that was a symbol of the world's ideological divide, East Germany, officially known as the German Democratic Republic, or GDR. After Germany's defeat in World War II, the victorious Allies split the country into 4 occupation zones. The zones controlled by the United States, Britain, and France became West Germany, a capitalist democracy. The Soviet-controlled zone became East Germany, a communist state established in 1949. For the next 40 years, East and West Germany existed as 2 separate nations, representing 2 opposing worlds. Life in East Germany was heavily controlled by the state and its infamous secret police. The Stasi. The economy was centrally planned, and personal freedoms were severely restricted. The most iconic symbol of this division was, of course, the Berlin Wall. Built in 1961, it physically and ideologically cut the city of Berlin in 2, preventing East Germans from fleeing to the west. But by the late 1980s, the winds of change were blowing across Eastern Europe. On November 9, 1989, in a moment that stunned the world, the Berlin Wall fell. People from both sides flooded the checkpoints, celebrating, crying, and chipping away at the concrete barrier. Less than a year later, in 1990, East Germany was officially dissolved and reunified with West Germany, creating the single, democratic Germany we know today. Now, let's turn to another post-World War I creation, Czechoslovakia. Like Yugoslavia, it was formed in 1918 from the remnants of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This new nation brought together 2 closely related but distinct peoples, the Czechs and the Slovaks. For much of its existence, Czechoslovakia was a beacon of democracy and industry in Central Europe. It flourished during the 1920s and 30s, but its fate was tragically sealed by the rise of Nazi Germany, leading to its occupation during World War II. After the war, it fell under Soviet influence and became a communist state. The country saw a brief period of hope during the 1968 Prague Spring, a movement aimed at liberalizing the country, but it was brutally crushed by a Soviet-led invasion. Freedom finally arrived in 1989 with the Velvet Revolution, a peaceful, student-led uprising that overthrew the communist government in just a few weeks. With democracy restored, however, old differences between the Czechs and Slovaks began to surface. Instead of descending into conflict, their leaders chose a different path. Through peaceful negotiations, they agreed to go their separate ways. On January 1, 1993, Czechoslovakia was formally dissolved, creating two new independent nations, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. This remarkable peaceful separation is famously known as the Velvet Divorce, standing in stark contrast to the violent breakup of Yugoslavia. Let us step further back in time to talk about an empire that shaped the world for over 600 years, the Ottoman Empire. Founded around 1299, this Turkish empire grew from a small state in Anatolia into one of the most powerful and longest-lasting dynasties in world history. At its peak, it controlled vast territories spanning 3 continents: Southeastern Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa. Its capital, Constantinople, now Istanbul, was a bustling hub of culture, science, and trade. Bridging the East and the West, the empire was a major Islamic power, and its sultans were seen as leaders of the Muslim world. For centuries, the Ottomans were at the forefront of military, artistic, and scientific advancements. However, by the 19th century, the once mighty empire began to decline. It was nicknamed the sick man of Europe as it struggled with internal corruption, nationalist revolts in its territories, and military defeats against rising European powers. The final blow came during World War I, siding with the Central Powers. The empire suffered a devastating loss. In the aftermath, the empire was dismantled by the Allied victors. A Turkish war of independence, led by the visionary Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, rose from the ashes. 1922, the Ottoman Sultanate was officially abolished, and a year later, the modern secular Republic of Turkey was born, marking the end of a 6-century-long imperial era. Finally, we arrive at the most recent superpower to vanish from the map, the Soviet Union, or the USSR, formed in 1922 after the Russian Revolution. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was the world's first communist state. It grew to become a global superpower, encompassing 15 republics and stretching across 11 time zones, from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean. Its influence was immense. The USSR was the United States' main rival in the Cold War, a decades-long struggle for global dominance that pushed the world to the brink of nuclear war. It achieved incredible scientific feats, like launching the first satellite, Sputnik, and sending the first human, Yuri Gagarin, into space. But behind the Iron Curtain, the Soviet system was plagued by deep-seated problems. A rigid, centrally planned economy led to widespread shortages and inefficiency. Political repression was rampant, and dissent was crushed. By the 1980s, the system was crumbling under its own weight. Leader Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of glasnost openness and perestroika restructuring were meant to reform the system, but they ended up unleashing forces that he couldn't control. Nationalist movements gained momentum in the various republics, and the communist regimes in Eastern Europe collapsed one by one. In August 1991, a failed coup by hardline communists sealed the Soviet Union's fate. On Christmas Day 1991, Gorbachev resigned, and the Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. The dissolution of the USSR gave rise to 15 independent countries, including Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan, and fundamentally redrew the political map of the world. So there you have it, 5 countries that once held so much power and influence, now relegated to the pages of history books. From the violent collapse of Yugoslavia to the peaceful velvet divorce of Czechoslovakia, from the fall of ancient empires to the dissolution of modern superpowers, these stories teach us a crucial lesson. The world is in a constant state of flux. Borders are not set in stone, and nations are not forever. Their survival depends on a delicate balance of unity, peace, economic stability, and leadership. History is not just about the past. It's a living story that continues to shape our present and future. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey today. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the stories that have shaped our world. Let me know in the comments which former country you find most interesting, or if there's another one you'd like us to cover. Until next time, stay curious.